In the name of Jesus, amen. Today we ponder and pay attention to our Savior's words from Luke chapter 12. And I printed a powerful paragraph in blue from Dr. Art Just, a professor at our Fort Wayne Seminary. A beautiful commentary on what God is doing in these verses. He pointed out that Jesus, he used 10 imperatives in our gospel reading. Direct, matter-of-fact, command statements. We pay attention because it's important. That he says, do not be anxious. Seek first God's kingdom and many other direct commands. But listen again to our Savior. Therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, nor about your body, what you will put on. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Jesus knew, and he knows, that we struggle with anxiety in different forms. I'd like to take a survey, in fact, this morning, and be a bit transparent and a bit vulnerable and brave. But if the answer is yes, raise your hand. Do you ever feel anxious or overwhelmed? Do you ever feel stressed out? Does anxiety sometimes overpower you? Do you ever worry or fret about the future? Then this sermon is for you. And what our Savior says is for you. Now, I know he says not to worry, but for any of you who did not raise your hand, I'm worried about you. Anxiety is a symptom of our sinful nature. Anxiety can create depression, anger. It can prevent people from functioning effectively in everyday life. Now, we recognize there can be medical issues behind anxiety. There can be hormonal imbalances. Meditation might be necessary and helpful. But Jesus is primarily today referring to the anxiety that people have for not trusting in him or in God. In fact, Jesus says, "O you of little faith," referring to us when we're anxious or worry or have fears about earthly things that we cannot change or control. I think you and I are a bit conflicted. We would say to Jesus, yes, I agree, I believe, I should not worry. Anxiety is a negative thing. But our emotions are powerful. We at times permit them to trump the facts and faith. We know we're abundantly blessed and should not be stressed, and yet we worry. I must admit today, I do not always practice what I preach. I'm proclaiming what Jesus says. Do not worry. Don't be anxious. I agree. I can say amen to that. I'm far too blessed to be stressed. And yet, I'm a sinner. I do worry at times. There's so much to do. It's never ending. In a big congregation in school, people in crisis, places to go, people to visit in the hospital, people in hospice. And oh no, just this week again, I hear about another member diagnosed with serious cancer, horrible side effects, uncertainty about the outcome and the future. Will God help her beat it? My heart aches. It's true that trying to juggle all of the everyday demands of life can be challenging. At times, anxiety can overpower. There are times I feel frozen. unable to move forward, or to focus, or to concentrate. I admit that at times I permit anxiety to erase my joy and paralyze my actions. I think many of you can relate. Think for a minute today of some of the things happening in our Immanuel family. We're filled with new beginnings and big changes. We welcome Vicar Ian and Brittany. We're going to welcome Pastor Taylor and Betty and their 2 young children. They said goodbye last week to their Christian family in Norfolk, Nebraska. They've been packing, they're on the road. Imagine the stress they must be experiencing. I've met new students and families in the hallways. They're nervous. And think of our new staff. A bit unfamiliar, maybe a bit anxious about the opening of the new school year and the days ahead. It is our job and our joy to welcome them, embrace them with the joy and love of our Savior. Now yes, we know a new school year can create anxiety for students, for parents, for teachers, for administrators. Even if all of the preparations, communications, orientations, there's fear of new beginnings, of change, of the familiar. It can be exciting and frightening at the same time. Change produces stress. They say that the only human being who loves change is a baby with a dirty diaper. How will I make new friends? Our students who are heading to high school are asking. Will I be able to navigate all of the changes in high school? Will people like me? Our worries and fears and stress and anxiety, they can mount up fast. So how do we deal with daily anxiety and our lack of faith, our worries? Jesus provides his anxiety solution. And what is our Savior's solution? It's a matter of trust. It's a matter of listening to him, of following him, of praying to him. I felt some anxiety the past week and trying to open the new preschool edition expansion, trying to welcome and orient the new vicar, interacting with Pastor Taylor, 13 new staff. We have right at 90 staff, half full-time, half part-time. It can be overwhelming for everybody. But when I felt that anxiety building up, I came in here on Tuesday and just opened the hymnal, and I opened up to the service of Compline. But open up to page 255, 255 in the Lutheran service book. I think God opened it up to those pages for me because right there, as you and I need every day, it's just a plethora of promises from our loving, caring God. Cast our burdens on him. Trust in him. Hang on to his word. You can read those beautiful, comforting promises and be listening to Jesus. Today in our gospel reading, Christ uses creation as a connection to convey God's solution for anxiety. And remember what he said? He said, simply do this. Look and listen. Look at the birds of the air. Listen to them chirping and singing. That's the first solution to our human sinful anxiety. We're going to have a mini trivia contest. Who knows the official state bird for Missouri? I heard it, the bluebird, the bluebird. What would be your favorite bird? Is it maybe the bluebird, the redbird, the cardinal? For me, it's the hummingbird, magnificent creature of God. But you probably wouldn't say your favorite bird's the raven, but listen to what Jesus says. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to the span of your life? If you're not able to do that small of a thing, why are you anxious about everything else? Our God, who takes care of the birds and provides for them, will so much more take care of you and me. Jesus is saying, don't be anxious. God's got this. We give thanks and we remember that majestic symbol of our nation and the mascot of our enamel spoon, the eagle. And the eagle is a reminder of a powerful promise of God. Isaiah 40 says, even youths shall faint and grow weary, but those who hope in the Lord, they shall renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. When we trust in Jesus, our anxiety fades and our faith increases. And Jesus continues, don't just observe the birds, but consider the lilies, how they bloom and grow. They neither toil nor spin, and yet I tell you that Solomon, in all of his splendor, he was not arrayed like one of these. But if God, who so magnifies the brass that is alive in the field today and tomorrow thrown in the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? And do not seek what you are to eat, what you are to drink, and do not be worried. It's that simple. Look and listen to the birds. Look and ponder the lilies. God's got this. Today we give thanks that God showed how he removes our anxiety and burdens. For he sent his Son, our Savior. And therefore, let us lay aside every burden, every worry, every anxiety, and the sin that entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, spurning its shame. He's the one who took your burdens, my burdens, your anxiety, my anxiety, our worries. He took them upon himself at Calvary. And it did not end with suffering and death. But imagine that these were right, Easter lilies, for they point to a symbol of his victory, his resurrection, and that's the basis of our greatest joy. You see it on the cover of Connections, but that is our theme, a theme for the 171st year of Christian education at Anana. True joy in Jesus. He's the source, the foundation, the continuation of our joy. I found it really neat, walking around the hallways and the parking lot, welcoming new families, saying hi to returning families during orientation. I went into Amelia Bauman's room at a new sixth grade homeroom teacher in part-time PE, and she has one poster on the bulletin board. It says, "Blow out kindness like confetti." And that's what people who know the joy of Jesus do. They throw out kindness. They throw out his good news. They share his love. They live in joy, kind of like throwing out confetti as people who have been forgiven and given a new beginning through Christ. Mrs. Mears was in the hallway and came in the office area, and I was visiting someone, and she had family and then a young student, and the student looked frightened. Just her eyes were scrunched, her face was tense. She did not appear happy. She looked anxious. She looked frightened. I found out Mrs. Mears introduced me. She's a brand new student and coming from a different school, apprehensive, knowing nobody. Will I make friends as a fifth grader? And I met her, I just listened, and I watched for about 10 minutes as Mrs. Mears' smile and her radiant joy changed the demeanor of that new student. I saw her face loosening up, and Mrs. Mears gave her a hug. I gave her a hug. I gave her a fruit snap and a ring pop. I saw her smile, and I said, "You have an awesome teacher, Mrs. Blair. You're going to make great friends. You're going to have a wonderful time." And we brought her in the sanctuary. She hasn't been baptized yet. God's mission and that joy for us to share is right in front of us. And finally, I sat on the playground. I saw preschool kids at the end of summer camp. One fell down and scraped her arm. She was upset, crying, and what happened? The teacher ran to her, took her, embraced her, wiped away her tears, and very soon the crying vanished, and she was back smiling and playing. When you experience fear and tears and worries and pain and anxiety, cry out to Jesus, and our Savior embraces you and me with his love and removes our anxiety. For he points us to the birds and the lilies, and the same God who provides and cares for the redbirds, the robins, the ravens, remember, he cares so much more for you and me. God is with us. Jesus loves us. No need to be anxious. God's got this. Amen. We thank God for his amazing embrace and the sin of his love and amazing grace.